The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Welcome back in, episode number 22, Crossed Flags. We appreciate you joining us. Going to be a busy day coming up a little bit later on. We're going to actually have Molly finally give her movie review of Days of Thunder. Looking forward to that. We just found out in a little preview before we actually started recording that she paid
very close attention.
Real close attention to things. So looking forward to hearing it. We'll also introduce you to the person who's taking Molly's place. Now, here's the thing about this. Doesn't mean Molly's going away permanently. But for the most part, yeah, we're going to be changing producers. We'll let you know who the new producer is coming up in a bit. Plus, we got some big news coming from Richmond over the weekend, but let's give you a couple of real quick updates here. I'm Steve West. That's Matt Nicholson. If you were listening to the big show on Saturday, you found out that he was only with us for a couple of hours. The reason why is you're actually coaching youth football.
Yeah, I took on that task, I guess you could say, this year. I'm having a lot of fun with it, but I never thought I would be very close to being thrown out of a jamboree game right out of the gate with 5, 6, and 7-year-olds.
There's people out there that have to be asking the exact same question I was asking. How in the world do you get thrown out of a youth football game?
Let's just say we weren't in the SEC. We're not trying to run tempo and run a play every 5 seconds, but they were trying to let the other ones do that. So if you take away the 11-on-5 that it was when they scored, we threw a shutout.
There you go.
That's all I care about.
And season actually begins in earnest when? September?
September.
Okay.
September 7th.
And that'll affect the big show, but we'll deal with that then.
It won't be bad.
We're in podcast mode right now. All right, couple of signings. One from NASCAR in the Cup Series, and it is good news for one, Eric Jones. Eric Jones, who has been with some version of Legacy Motor Club for now going on 3+ years. Mm-hmm. He joined it in 2021. And that was back when it was Richard Petty Motorsports. Remember them? Since then, it has become Petty GMS Racing and now Legacy MC. And they like Eric Jones. They like what he's done. They're going to keep him around for a little while longer. You've got him signed to a 2-year contract extension, so he's going to be in the number 43 at least through the 2026 season. And if he does what he's been doing, which he has shown an affinity for a place like Darlington, and Darlington it's a tough place to race. Just about any driver will tell you. It's a challenging place to drive, and Eric Jones has not just 1 but 2 wins there. So if he can keep momentum up like that and Legacy MC, here's probably the more important thing.
Right.
If Legacy MC can figure out what it is that they have just totally missed on this year. Mm-hmm. This is their first year with Toyota, so there is something of a learning curve. And they decided not to go with generally what you would see out of any group that goes with Toyota, and that's kind of line themselves up with Joe Gibbs Racing. And they didn't do that this year. And I think that has hurt them to some extent.
It's showing, for sure.
But showing. They're going to have some stability there. They're kind of changing around things up at the front office as well. So they're definitely setting themselves up for success here, and I think in the pretty near future. So certainly keep an eye on both the 42 and 43 cars, especially if they can get the 42 cars kind of settled in, and it looks like they're getting that way too.
They're getting there.
From NASCAR to IndyCar with a signing as well, and this guy, David Malukas, you want to talk about a year for this guy. Good night almighty. So he was, Meyershank Racing last year, and
he was HMD last year.
HMD last year, thank you.
And he got signed to go to McLaren.
Yeah, September last year, got signed to go to Aero McLaren. We were thinking, hey, this is going to be a nice step up for this kid, you know? So as he's getting prepared and he's starting to get himself into whatever you want to call it, whatever fitness, or starting his fitness program in the off season to get ready for the year about a month beforehand, he's on a mountain bike. And he crashed his mountain bike and injured his wrist. And it just didn't seem to want to react the way that you would expect sometimes an injury to react. And it took a lot longer. And we found out that there was a clause in the Aero McLaren contract that said, David Malukas, you miss 4 for whatever reason, we can kick you out. So they did. And after going through this round-robin tournament of drivers, they finally decided to put Nolan Siegel in the car. Well, that left David Malukas trying to figure out what he was going to do. And he found a ride with Meyershank Racing, the aforementioned. And next year, he's back full-time. And he's, I guarantee you, going to be looking square at the Arrow McLaren ride and going, my A.J. Foyt racing ride, I'm going to try and make you eat it. That's right. He signed a multi-year deal with A.J. Foyt Racing. So David Malukas is going to be driving for Foyt next year. And I would be shocked if it's not pairing him with Santino Ferrucci.
I would be as well. But this tells me right here that the captain is putting him in the pipeline for a potential filling of a seat at Penske.
I would agree.
That's what it tells me.
Because you've got the agreement, the technical alliance between Team Penske and A.J. Foyt, and it has shown, especially with Santino Ferrucci, it has shown major benefits for Foyt Racing. But yeah, they just the one car. Santino Ferrucci seems to be able to take advantage of it. The second car, really nowhere to be seen, unfortunately.
No.
So
unfortunately not.
We'll see whether David Malukas is able to play with that and make it work. And then that brings us to the first of our two main topics, and that takes us to Richmond Raceway over the weekend, where we saw Goodyear bring the wet tires, which we would expect this. This is something that we talked about at the very beginning of the year. This is one of those short tracks where they're going to come in with a short track package that will be able to run under certain circumstances in wet. So you have the wet weather tire, but they have also been working up this option tire, that one, the red lettering as opposed to the yellow lettering. Yellow lettering is the primary. It's what we've been used to seeing for, well, all year, and I don't know how many years since. We've seen the yellow tire for a long time. Now, the compound changes from time to time, and somewhat depending on the track that we go to. Red letter tire means it's a softer compound tire. And we were wondering, because we saw this at North Wilkesboro. They brought this to the All-Star race, you might remember. Mm-hmm. And they tried to bring it to New Hampshire, but we ended up not using it because of wet weather conditions. So we ended up using the wet weather tires pretty much the whole race. But at North Wilkesboro, Joey Logano was able to run the soft compound tire. And let me repeat that. The sticky one. The one that should lose its adhesion in quick fashion. Mm-hmm. Should fall off very quick, or you should see massive tire degradation in a hurry. No. He ran 50 laps on one set, came in right in the middle of the All-Star race, got a new set, ran the next 50 laps. Not a problem. And we can attribute that to the fact that brand new asphalt at North Wilkesboro. So yeah, probably that had something to do with it. Richmond's not new. When was the last time Richmond was paved?
Ooh, 90s maybe.
And we've been there. Mm-hmm. We laid our hands on the surface at Richmond when we were there in 2019. Mm-hmm. Sandpaper-ish.
Very.
And that was 5 years ago. So it's only gotten more pronounced in that time. I can guarantee it.
Oh, yeah.
The drivers, highly complimentary of this tire. Denny Hamlin even has gone so far, and I think this is going too far. Denny Hamlin says they need to make this the new primary tire.
I don't disagree with him. I do not disagree with him.
I think what we need to do, and I'll say this right here and right now, I think what we need to do is we need to keep the primary tire the way that it is, and they need to even soften this compound up even more.
Keep the format like it is. Keep them with the option.
Oh, yeah,
because
absolutely.
it added an intriguing level to the race. And it brought some anticipation of what was going to happen next, or who was going to do what next. Okay? You could see when Daniel Suarez bolted on the red set here, he went from 16th to 1st in a hurry. And I mean in a hurry. But the ones that were on the prime, the original yellows, they came on faster later, if you follow what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. They got faster later in the run. Naturally to expect that. But my opinion they need to keep the dual option there.
Sure.
Give them the option to change and use as needed. When you get to a place like Bristol that's 500 laps, you add in a third red set or maybe even a fourth because they get 10 sets at Bristol, I know.
And concrete is worse than asphalt when it comes to what it's going to do to the tires.
Go 6 and 4, 7 and 3, whatever. However you want to do that. So,
yeah,
I think they need to leave both of them.
I think they do. And the only reason I say I might go a little bit softer on the option tire is to make it fall off that much quicker. Because, I mean, if you make this tire the primary tire and then you're going to come out with an option tire beyond that, you're making a gumball.
Sure.
You're going to make one of the stickiest tires that's going to be out there available. And yeah, for what, 5-10 laps, you're going to be screaming fast, and then that tire is going to go away.
Yep.
There needs to be a happy medium somewhere in here. I mean, they were doing, what, 40 laps before you really started seeing a fall off on this tire?
40 to 45, yeah.
You know, I think maybe you could drop it down into the 35 to 40 range, just a tick softer, and that way you've got that much more separation between your primary tire and the option tire. Mm-hmm. And yeah, as you noted, Daniel Suarez going 16 to first in the matter of just a few laps in general terms. That's what we want to see. And this creates a new strategy. This is not a tire you'll see at a Talladega. It's not going to work at a Talladega. Could they at some point in time figure out a formula where you might begin to see it at tracks like Charlotte, not necessarily Atlanta, because Atlanta's the super speedway package.
Talladega.
But could you see it in a Nashville? Could you see it at a Charlotte, at a Texas, at a Vegas?
You could.
Maybe at some point in time down the line, once they've gotten this worked in. Because they're going to work it in at these short tracks. North Wilkesboro, Richmond, Martinsville, maybe even at the end of the year, they might take it to Phoenix. And you want to talk about throwing an interesting curveball in the championship race. Give them the option tire in the championship race.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, but the way Talladega is, it's virtually nowhere. You could run the whole same set of tires the entire race.
Exactly.
Okay.
Doesn't matter how much of a gumball you make it.
Yeah, you could run the same set of tire all the way.
And Daytona's pretty much the same way.
Daytona's very close.
Atlanta would be an interesting choice because there's a little more G-force on that.
Yeah, there's a little more pull because the radius of the turns are tighter.
But I just don't think that I don't think they would do it at Atlanta just because they're under the super speedway rules.
I could see this coming next at Martinsville.
Yeah.
I could see Martinsville.
And I think that that's a big topic of conversation with NASCAR right now after having what I believe they think is a very successful weekend with that because we heard it, again, not only from the drivers, but the NASCAR officials as well.
I don't count the officials because they don't have their butts in the seat. So, but yeah, I would give it an A. Mm-hmm. I'd give it a solid A.
Okay. Now, Saturday, you were watching practice and you gave me a screenshot and we started wondering, is there really that much of a difference between these two tires?
There really wasn't.
That's why I say.
There really wasn't.
Keep the primary tire the way it is. Make this one a little bit softer.
Because if you go softer, let the racetrack take more rubber, which gives the track characteristic with more grip, you could eliminate the need for that garbage PJ1 and resin.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I like where they're going with this. So. Very, very much so. All right. The next picture we're going to show you is actually a split picture because this is Sunday evening at Richmond. And if you don't know what we're talking about when it comes to Sunday evening at Richmond, where you been if you're a racing fan?
Have you been under?
No kidding. And a fairly uneventful race when it comes to caution flags. There were only 3, and 2 of them were because of stage break. Mm-hmm. And then you have the final caution, which happens on the final lap. And what do we know about having a caution after the white flag shows? Race ends. Boom. And wouldn't you know it, the guy who likes to play pinball anyway is playing pinball again. Ladies and gentlemen, Austin Dillon, who was so far out of a playoff position coming into the race at Richmond, he needed the Hubble telescope to see it.
Let's give you a reference here. Out of the 35 full-time competitors that have started every race, he was the 3rd worst.
He came into Richmond
worst,
sitting 32nd in points. He needed a win. He got it. How? By running through Joey Logano. And then once he threw Joey Logano out to the side and into the fence, witnessed that, Denny Hamlin saw the opportunity, dove low, and he got turned. And Austin Dillon gets the win. Let's deal with Joey Logano first. How do we know he drove through Joey Logano? Stats tell us.
Time for me to put the helmet on.
Stats tell us that. Resident driver has seen the SMT data.
I seen the SMT data from the Hamlin point, but with the naked eye, you could tell he had one thing on his mind, that was 22 cars not winning the race. But when you do an asinine move like that from over 3 car lengths back, you're losing it. I'm sorry, you're losing it. Because it was clear as I'm gonna say clear as mud. Okay. Painfully obvious. He drove into the center of the corner before he even thought about lifting. And at Richmond, that's not supposed to happen. If you drive in that deep, the front clip of that car is going to be off of it because you're going to hit the wall. Because the radius of the corner and how the corner's laid out, it's going to pull you that way unless you lift quick. The lift point at Richmond is 3 car lengths before the entry point of turn 3. The reason I know that, 1, been up there, seen a solo car run and listened to where the throttle points were. 2, iRacing will give you a good depiction of it as well. A very good depiction of it. Okay? He knew what he was doing. But there's a difference between doing it over 3 car lengths back versus a car length to a half a car length off. It is much less of a conspicuous move if you're so much closer because it could be viewed as an old-fashioned bump and run. It's like not as a boom.
Yeah.
You're going to kill him.
Yeah.
The second part is what I have the major problem with. The major problem with. This is where the SMT data, basically the black box of these cars, tell you everything of what that car's doing from lap 1, and in this case to lap 408, because they went 8 laps of overtime. At lap 407, at the same point of the racetrack where he's at right there, the steering data revealed his steering was at negative 3.7. In this case, negative if the wheel is turned to the right from dead center where it's indexed, positive is to the left. Lap 408, there was a 36-degree change in the steering angle from a negative 3.7 in lap 407 to a positive 33.9. Nobody can tell me he didn't intend to do that. The data, by the definition of it, the data is damning to him. It's got him pointed at a wall.
So that leads us to the point where we started recording this right about 2:30 on Wednesday afternoon. And everyone's been wondering whether or not we were going to see penalties for Joey Logano for post-race actions on pit road, whether there's going to be any sort of a smack on the wrist of Austin Dillon for what happened right here. And we still haven't heard.
There's nothing. The last thing that anybody has posted or any outlet channel, RCR puts a post up. I don't know who done it or who authorized it, but they put up a post while they're waiting on this of a "we're not done yet" and put a video of a Dillon walking through the smoke and everything. So that's either A, you're just taunting somebody, or B, they know what the decision is and it's not as bad as what it should be. Keyword, should be.
And I'm getting the funny feeling that's the case, at least when it comes to Austin Dillon. Because we have seen this before. I mean, we've seen this with Austin Dillon. He drove through Eric Almirola to claim a Daytona 500. Now, yeah, Daytona and Richmond are two different animals, but it is something of a pattern. If he has the opportunity to win and you're ahead of him, you better watch your you-know-what, because he's probably going to throw it into the wall.
Yep.
You know, and a lot of people will talk about how Joey Logano's done this, you know, and most drivers out there at some point in time or another have pulled a bump and run at a short track. You're the resident driver here. You probably pulled a bump and run and probably have been the victim of one.
You are correct.
Okay.
You are very correct.
But there's a difference between going through and bumping somebody and getting them up loose and out of the lane and wrecking them. Now, you say, well, how do you know that he wrecked him? Austin Dillon said he did.
I had to do what I had to do. You're admitting you've done it on purpose. But when you got your spotter, and God love Richard Childress, I don't know why he said, oh, I didn't hear it. It's as clear as day. Brandon Manesh said over the radio, wreck him, wreck him, wreck him.
Yeah.
That's intent.
Sorry, but
that's clear intent. There's a difference between this here. That is not racing. That's not. I'm sorry.
That's bumper cars.
That's bumper cars, and there are quite a few high-level voices that are well respected within this sport that have said the same thing. That's not racing. So if this is going to be allowed, who's to say the same thing would not happen or happen at Phoenix for the championship?
Let's go back, not last year, but to the end of 2022, when we saw a move that is now illegal in NASCAR at Martinsville to get into the championship round. What everyone calls the Hail Melon, where Ross Chastain comes off a turn 2 on the final lap, realizes that he's basically got to throw it all out there or else he's not going to make it past this round to make it to the championship round. So what did he do? He put the car in 5th gear, high gear, floored the accelerator, put the car up against the outside wall, and ran the outside wall, making it look like, on live television, a video game maneuver.
And set the all-time speed record at Martinsville for a single lap, too.
Absolutely. And it was fun to look at. It was fun to watch. It was fun to see the aftermath of it. All of it was great, except for Denny Hamlin, who was the guy who was left on the outside looking in because Ross Chastain made it to the playoffs and made it to the championship race at the expense of Denny Hamlin. That move got outlawed real quick. The bump and run should be something that NASCAR allows. Again, you bump, get them high, get them a little bit loose out of the corner without doing what the 22 is doing right here. Just get them loose, get them out of sorts, out of the lane, allows you to dive under and go on and claim the win.
It's called a wash.
Yeah. Nobody was happy with what Dale Earnhardt did to Terry Labonte at Bristol back in the 90s. Nobody. Least of all, Terry Labonte or the 160,000 fans that were at Bristol. It was one of the few times that I heard Dale Earnhardt get roundly booed by almost everybody in the grandstands.
Mm-hmm.
But Dale Earnhardt himself was a victim of it sometime in 2000, I want to say, and I can't remember the track.
That would be Pocono and Jeremy Mayfield.
Okay. What did Dale Earnhardt do when he got out of the car? He looked at the camera, he looked at the reporter and said, if I'm going to dish it out, I better damn well know how to take it. Okay?
Yep.
But again, there's a difference between being intentionally spun out and accidentally spinning somebody out. That's intent. We've seen it before, and unfortunately, yeah, Denny Hamlin's right. Joey Logano's right. That line needs to be figured out. And we need to be able to say, okay, you go up to this line, you're fine. But you go past that line, and there's a penalty to incur. But that line needs to be as solid as this line is right here. It can't be moving. It can't be over here one race and over here the next. It's got to be here and here all the time. And that, unfortunately, is a problem that NASCAR's got, is inconsistency when it comes to applying the rule book.
It's going on nearly 4 p.m. on the East Coast, and they still haven't said nothing. So there's either a lot of begging, oh, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that, or they're trying to figure out how to drop the hammer. They're figuring out one or two. And at the end of the day, you got to establish a line here, because here's why I say this. You go back and look at the Cars Tour race from Hickory a couple weeks ago, the late model series that Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kevin Harvick, Jeff Burton, and Justin Marks all co-own. The same thing happened. Leader gets spun. Second place car goes for the win. Guess what happens to the second place car? You're disqualified. Win's taken away. We're not going to race like that. So if you're allowing this right here to happen at the upper levels, you're immediately telling the lower levels it's okay to do this. This is not the WWF, WWE, whatever you want to call it, AEW, wrestling. This is not this right here. This is motorsports. And it's sadly turning into too much of entertainment. Mm-hmm. This is supposed to be a sport. Now let's go to the after the race. Why in the blue heck are people wanting to, oh, what Joey Logano did on pit road was way worse than what Austin Dillon did on the racetrack? No. Here's where you're wrong. Anybody with a functioning brain cell, official or not, if you're credentialed to be and have pit road access, whether it be through an essential pass or it be through a VIP pass, you're not supposed to cross the wall until all cars are completely stopped. Stopped. That means motors off, cars in gear, window nets coming down, nothing's moving. But no, we're letting all the family members, and I saw even pit crew family members trying to migrate out to where there was on the front stretch in moving cars.
Now, here's one of the major problems with that. This right here. How many of those people are walking out onto pit road with cars moving, looking at this more than they're paying attention to the cars? And unfortunately, that is a problem, especially the younger.
But the sad
that they are, because they're all going through and they're looking at replays of this, or they're tweeting the fact that they're at the track and they saw it live and in person.
Yeah.
They're not paying attention to this.
They're not. But the bad part about this is there were officials leading these people out through moving cars. When you have something like that happen at the end of a race, and you know for a fact the tensions and emotions are through the roof, why are you even going to take a group of people, I don't care who they're with,
sure,
through a pack of moving cars?
No.
Stupid.
And yes, the men and women who are running at NASCAR, any of the top 3 levels, the men and women who are running in Indycar or Formula One, these are, or the NHRA for that matter, these men and women are at the top of their game. They're the best of the best. These people can wheel a car, period, better than 99% of the public. Okay? But the problem is that they don't have control over everything all the time. And if something happens to go wrong at just the wrong moment with a car, massive problems.
Huge problem.
Don't even want to consider the potential ramifications of that, because it's ugly. And it involves caskets. So, yeah, what Joey Logano did, he did in the heat of the moment. He did under emotion. Was it in judgment in hindsight, knowing that there are people that are on pit road that are certainly not set up to be in any way, shape, or form protected from a car? Was what he did stupid? Yeah. But what was really the more stupid part? Him acting on the emotions of the end of the race, which we see every driver do anyway, or the fact that we have what Formula One would call, and what IndyCar would call by and large, a security breach by allowing people on the track while cars are moving. Again, that goes back to that hard line. It shouldn't be here one week, here the next week, here the next week, here, then here, then here, then here, then here. Hard line. Here's your rule. You can go right up to it. Don't go over it.
Bingo.
All right.
Simply put,
Shall we lighten things up a little bit?
why not?
All right. Let's bring in young Miss Molly here for a moment. And this goes back to the education of young Molly. When we came on and we did this podcast to begin with, we asked her because we knew that her Monday through Friday gig with the Jocks 94.5 show, Three Man Front, has you apparently going through from time to time and watching a movie and doing a movie review. And it's not new movies that you're talking about here. Okay? I mean, like Thursdays, I can go watch a new movie, and on Friday morning on the Dixon and Vining show on Talk 99.5, I'll give a movie review of a new movie. I did it just a couple of weeks ago with Deadpool and Wolverine. They're having you go back and finding older movies.
Yes.
And watching them. So we asked, had you ever seen Days of Thunder?
No.
How in the world had you not?
Until
Especially now that we find out that you really, really like Tom Cruise movies.
I do.
And somehow you missed this one?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what started the whole movie review segment. We called it Molly's Movie Minute. And it's because I was very busy as a kid. I was always involved in like after school activities and, growing up a competitive dancer. After school, I would have dance from like 3 to 9:30. So I never really had time to watch movies, like old and new movies.
Yeah.
And, they would say a quote from like Goodfellas. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so it was cool just because every week our listeners got to vote what movie they wanted me to see. And, it would range from a movie that came out 2 years ago or 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like one of my favorites was Animal House. I loved that one.
Oh, God. Yes.
And one of our listeners,
well.
he actually bought me a T-shirt from Animal House. Blutarsky, I think.
Yes.
At the end of the movie, he like becomes a politician.
Yes, he does.
He bought me like a Blutarsky for president shirt or something. Like stuff like that. And it was just really cool because, the listeners got to give him their 2 cents.
Okay.
One of the movies was A Few Good Men, which is another Tom
Cruise movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit after this one, by the way.
You can't handle the truth.
I really like that movie too.
Okay.
And, there was just, it was a wide range.
So
of
Animal
movies.
House is a favorite?
Yes.
Okay. What's the one that you liked the least?
Benchwarmers.
I'm kind of with you on
I
that.
feel like if I was 8 years old, I would have loved it. I'm not 8.
Yeah,
I'm the youngest on the show. I'm the
humor
youngest
of
in
it.
the studio in the entire building. But was it my favorite? My favorite.
Chronologically, up here.
Yeah. I mean, there was a few moments I was like, ha, but other than that. But
What's supposed to be a comedy, if you don't laugh, that's not funny.
Right. My all-time favorite, though, of the series was Shawshank Redemption.
Excellent.
That was that and Hoosiers. Those
Two
are
very good
probably
choices.
my 2 favorites.
Okay. This movie comes out in the years after Top Gun. Okay? And you've seen Top Gun. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Only the first one. I haven't seen the newest one.
This is Tom Cruise, who plays lead in both. Ooh. This is Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer, who produced Top Gun as well. This is the same director, Tony Scott, who directed both. Basically, everybody looked at this and said, it's Top Gun doing NASCAR.
That's kind of how, no offense, I like Top Gun better still.
And most people probably would agree with you.
But I like the movie. Again, I love Tom Cruise. Well, younger. I will say it was cool watching him in the closing ceremony of the Olympics.
Yes.
Like jumping out of the plane and riding on the motorcycle to Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like that's just so American.
Yeah, but let's face it, we all know he's not riding that motorcycle under the Atlantic Ocean to get that flag to Los Angeles.
No. But it was just, again, that's so Tom Cruise. If anyone's going to do that, it's going to be Tom Cruise.
Sure.
I did so my favorite Christmas movie is Christmas Vacation, and Cousin Eddie, he's the team owner.
That he is.
Tim Dalen. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know. I just knew it was Cousin Eddie.
Yep.
But he popped up on the screen. I was like, oh, the blank is full. Like that just immediately came in my mind.
We do appreciate you realizing that we're trying to keep ourselves edited on this podcast.
I would never say
and
that.
we thank you thank you for doing that.
When
but
mics are on, I would never say that.
Randy Quaid is an interesting guy. There's no doubt about it. If you ever watch Independence Day, you'll do the same thing.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, you'll get around to it, I'm sure.
What was your favorite quote, though, that you wanted me to figure out?
Well, thinking back on it, I have about probably 5 through there.
Well, there's a few.
There's quite a few, but the favorite quote came from his first win at Darlington.
Okay.
If you go to the outside, you can hold it.
Okay.
That was the quote. I actually was told that one time before a race.
Okay.
An actual live dirt race that I was racing in. And I'm thinking, this is about to be bad. Because the track I was at did not have a back wall. It was just right at the top, and you're going off of an embankment. I was like, okay.
That's not good.
So my mentor comes up to the car, and he looks at me. He says, and he's smiling. He says, if you go to the outside, you can hold it. I'm going, good luck with that. I went to the outside, and it worked. And won my first race.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it worked for...
It worked.
Yeah, it worked for Tom Cruise.
But I didn't have a wall to lean on.
That's true. I did
Thankfully,
like, at the end of the movie in Daytona, when, what's his name, like Russ or something?
Russ
He's like,
Wheeler.
he always goes to the outside. And
Yeah.
then he doesn't. He goes to the inside and he wins.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So.
you got to set it up. You got to set it up. All right. So overall, your thoughts on Days of Thunder?
I liked it. Again, not my favorite Tom Cruise movie, but...
So if you're going to give it a grade, and I don't know what your grade is.
I like a 1. I usually would do like a 1 through 5
Okay.
star. I gave A Few Good Men, I think a 4, like a 4.5.
Okay.
I'd probably give this like a 3, 3.5.
Okay.
That's fair.
So,
So we'll call it
Yeah.
3.25 just to kind of split the
just
difference.
yeah, and that because again I liked it, and I like sports movies, and again I like Tom Cruise.
We need to get
All that
her.
helps.
We need to get her
Yeah.
linked up with Russell and let Russell tell her the story of filming Days of Thunder because he's originally from Darlington.
Oh, okay.
And Darlington, it was the home base for where they filmed the majority of the movie at.
Oh.
And he said, I can take you to a place where there were so many cars that they went through in that movie alone. He said it's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. Rick Hendrick was highly involved in this.
He was.
He
He
built
was.
most of those cars that they featured in that.
Yep.
And it is somewhat loosely based upon Rick Hendrick as well.
I was gonna ask if it was sort of based on
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's somewhat loosely based
and like
on
how
the story of Rick Hendrick.
accurate the movie actually is.
Oh, I'll let the resident driver take that one.
It's extremely accurate.
Okay.
There is a lot of accuracies in there.
There's a few that are a little overdone for dramatic purposes,
Well,
like
that's
the
movies.
the overt amount of shifting.
Yeah, the shifting one. Two, the flipping that was going down the backstretch at Daytona when he was in the Superflow car and he had to be lifted out of the hop in the helicopter.
And you couldn't see.
Yeah, they actually did that at a runway strip with a concrete barrier painted with the word Daytona on the wall. They filmed it at an airport runway. But the only part that I've always had a gripe with Days of Thunder, and I have this with other motorsports movies as well, when you say you're at one track and it's clear as day you're at somewhere else. Like it
Ford
was
versus Ferrari.
Ford versus Ferrari, where they ran
I
the
haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Ford versus Ferrari. There's a part where they're doing the 24 hours of Daytona, and it's clearly they're filming this at the now extinct track that was right outside of Los Angeles. So that's my only
Little
one
things
gripe.
like that.
Little
Yeah.
things like that. When like he and I were like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting there watching that and I'm looking at safer barriers, which haven't been invented as of the setting time of Ford versus Ferrari, which is
Right.
mid to late 60s.
Okay.
You know, safer barrier didn't come in until the mid 2000s. And they left the safer barrier there. And it would be very difficult. I will say this. It would have been very difficult for them and expensive for them to take off the safer barrier and then
very.
reinstall
Very.
it.
Very.
But with what you can do with CGI now,
Little things like that.
you could have
the
easily
details.
gotten rid of the safer barrier and they didn't even
Absolutely.
take the time to do it, stuff
Right.
like that. So, yeah, I mean, it is little things like that. There are two spots in there that I really like in Days of Thunder. One is where he gets him out on the track all by himself and says, hey, listen,
Here we go.
here's the difference between open wheel and what you're driving now. You know, tires are twice as wide, car's half as heavy. Now your car's twice as heavy and your tires are half as wide. You know, that one. And Fred Dalton Thompson is Big John, which
Yeah.
is somewhat loosely based on Big Bill France,
Okay.
and him going in there and saying, y'all are looking like a monkey, a football.
The Cole Trickle is based off the old driver Tim Richmond.
Yes.
Okay.
That's who he's based off of
Yeah.
right there. And Tim Richmond passed away from HIV/AIDS in 87, 88.
Yeah. He was a playboy from the get-go. He loved to party. He loved being with the ladies, and it caught up to him.
We have a penalty report.
Ah, here we go. Breaking news
Finally.
right on the podcast.
From the antics of Richmond,
Antics.
straight from the NASCAR social media channel, Austin Dillon's win at Richmond will not count towards playoff eligibility
Whoa.
in the driver or owner championships.
That's huge.
But he keeps the win. He does not get a playoff spot, which
Means he's
fantastic because that's nothing but a taken up playoff spot. Him being out by the end of round one.
well, and here's the thing: Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano would have worked up a cabal of the other drivers, and they would have figured out a way to make sure that Austin Dillon didn't make it out of round one.
Exactly.
So,
yeah,
yeah. All right,
for sure.
so that's the big part. Everything else, we'll have more on this and more on what, if anything else, comes out of penalty time when we get to the big show on Saturday. Again, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. Go on to YouTube and look up CRN Live, and you can watch it there. We'll have all kinds of details there. So, Molly, things are changing with us. You will no longer be our regular producer. Mm-hmm. We will go to a time.
I'm not gone forever, though.
No. We will go to a time where majority of the time we're going to record earlier on a Wednesday. But that on occasion, like when Carrie's not able to do it, we'll end up readjusting our time back, and you'll be our producer once again.
Yep.
So when you see the closing credits, you will still see Molly's name. We left it.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the point where now we have to introduce you to Carrie. And we had a whole lot of fun with the whole education of young Molly situation when it came to beginning this. We can't necessarily say that about Carrie. Carrie knows what he's talking about. We've had a couple of pretty good conversations with Carrie the last couple of weeks. Well, again,
just wait till we get technical.
I know just enough to get in trouble.
I know. I mean, there are things that we'll have to teach you, and obviously, we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions about anything that you want. But you are more familiar with the racing world.
Yes, I've been a fan for a long time.
All right, then. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been in radio for a while.
For a very long time, if you remember, you were doing traffic.
I do remember doing
I
traffic
was working for Tuttle and Klein
20 years ago.
for the X.
Yes.
So, yes, I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
Worked for Feinbaum for 15 years.
Okay.
Did the opening drive here at Jocks, then now do imaging, and now I'm going to do y'all's podcast.
Yeah, and we're
Sweet.
looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Very much so. What's your experience with racing? How long have you been a fan?
I can remember watching Bobby Allison, Davey Allison, Bill Bonnet, all those guys. So I've been a fan since I was 10,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah.
And, of course, Dale Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And
You've seen all the changes from
I have.
from all the days of yore to now. So, do you follow it avidly now, or you just
I try my best.
Okay.
And that's one good thing about this is that I'll be able to get the news every week on Wednesdays.
And that's why we're here.
That's why we're here. That's what we do.
That's why we're here.
It's our job. So, yeah, beginning next week, we'll have a time figured out. But, yeah, it'll probably still be on Wednesdays. That's the reason why we call ourselves Crossed Flags. Middle of the week, Crossed Flags indicate what? Middle of the race, right? Yep. So it'll still be on Wednesdays, might be a couple hours earlier. We'll work out a time with Carrie, and Carrie is going to be our new regular producer. We're looking forward to it. And
Happy to be here.
yeah, glad to have you on board. Molly, we're looking forward to meeting up with you again at some point in time down the road. In the meantime,
Talladega's coming.
Talladega's coming. We have promised to get her out there so that she can see it in all of its glory because she's seen it from the interstate. Doesn't do it justice. Sorry, doesn't do it justice. You've been to Talladega.
What that guy
yeah.
said. What that
Infield.
guy said right there. Infield.
We want to
You
get
have to
her.
go to the infield
We
at
want to get
night.
her in the infield, in the middle, look around, and if we can get her up into the PA tower with me on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and get the full scope of it from our way of looking at things,
Yeah.
we'll make it work.
Wow.
Because that's an entirely different viewpoint as well. You want to talk about looking at it from, again, you even look at it on television. It's hard to catch the scope of how big Talladega is.
Very, very.
So, yeah, we'll have to figure out, I don't know, pictures so that we can show Molly's reaction of, holy, you know what, how big is this place?
We'll make it a whole production.
Yeah, this might be a whole Crossed Flags production.
Cross Flags field trip.
I like it. I like it.
Cross Flags field trip.
Molly
And
has never been such the center of attention before.
and hope she doesn't use the line Arlie Army had in Full Metal Jacket. Holy, what is that?
It's going to be fun. Join us again on Saturday, and don't forget, next week we're going to be right here again with another edition of Crossed Flags. Until then, enjoy the racing, and yeah, we're going to have a whole lot more to talk about come Saturday morning. I can guarantee it.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.